Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast live on YouTube and Facebook. Welcome to the show. It is transfer deadline day. The window is now shut 10 minutes ago. As expected, Newcastle United did not bring in a senior player. They did bring in a youngster, more on that in a moment. I'm Andrew Musgrove, joined by Aaron Stokes. Aaron, as we've just said there, no senior arrivals today. As expected, Eddie Howe said that as much once the deal for Lewis Hall was complete last week. What's your thoughts on deadline day and on the fact that Newcastle United haven't brought another addition in?
Look, I think it was nice of Eddie Howe to give us the courtesy this morning of letting us all know, that there was going to be no incoming business. I think, Newcastle United fans had sort of accepted that was going to be the case. Whether or not that was the right or wrong decision, I think we're not going to learn that until a couple of weeks or months down the line when the season starts to really kick in. Newcastle United fans, obviously, ever since last weekend when Botman got injured, have sort of been clamouring a little bit for another centre-back. Eddie Howe clearly doesn't think that they need one. He thinks that they've got enough in all departments, and they're just keeping their powder dry maybe until January or even next summer.
They do, though, I think, in the mind of some, and myself included, look a bit short in certain areas. You mentioned there the centre-back now. We wait to see the team news against Brighton to whether Sven Botman is missing after picking up that knock against Liverpool. And I suppose that's the worry. Look, he might just miss Brighton, and then you've got the international break and he'll be back for the Brentford game afterwards. But after the international break, the games come thick and fast. You've got the Cup game, you've got the Champions League as well. In your mind, have Newcastle left themselves a little bit short at the back?
A little bit, maybe. I think if you'd asked everyone this time last week before the Liverpool game, I don't think the sort of desire for a centre-back would have been that good. But all of a sudden, we've suddenly seen Sven Botman go down injured, and we've all sort of thought, actually, when you strip back and look at that centre back sort of department, there may be one or two light. Lots to talk about Alex Murphy potentially coming through after a good pre-season. We're yet to see him in a Premier League squad so far since the summer. I don't know. I'm not too sure. I think Eddie Howe was very clear that he thought, the window it can't be determined. You can't really put a grade on it until the season started. But I think there may be just one or two light in maybe one or two positions.
We have been talking about the transfer window. Obviously, we had a live event on Wednesday, and I went around and asked the panel, where would you like to see Newcastle strengthen if there was no obstacles? Which realistic position would you like to see Newcastle bring an extra body in? And a couple of the panel said centre-back. I said a number 6. Someone else said a striker. It'd be interesting to know what people watching live are thinking, or if you're watching later, drop it in the comments. Because I do think, it's easy to say in an ideal world, isn't it? Because I think they've done a really good job with the players they've bought. But I am a little concerned about the striking position. If Isak or Wilson pick up an injury, who's going to then fill in? And again, I know we've just said it's we weren't that worried before the knock to Botman, but I still think some probably were. I still think some were looking at it in saying, even if Botman, Chair and Lascelles are all fit, you are leaving yourself a wee bit short.
Yeah, look, I think there's a couple of ways to look at it, and I think let's be positive for a moment and look at the window as a whole. I think they've strengthened. I think they're stronger than they were this time around than they were going into summer. They obviously only really offloaded Alan St-Maximin from their first team. They've strengthened with a couple of good youngsters, Sandro Tonali, Harvey Barnes. They're good additions. But then I think if you look on the flip side, if we rewind back to the start of the summer, and we were probably doing podcasts with fans and between ourselves asking, where do they need to strengthen? And I think a lot of people would have said, well, they need someone to come and replace Dan Burn. They haven't done that. Some people said, they probably need the right midfielder to replace Miggy. They haven't done that. So it depends which side of the coin you look at it. Have they done enough in terms of what fans maybe thought they were going to do 3 months ago? No. Are they better off? Yes. Is Eddie Howe happy? Yes. They've signed one of the best midfielders in Europe. They signed a very, very good upgrade in Alan St-Maximin. They've got 2 for the future. as I said the other day, I think we're maybe ranking it at an A rather than an A plus.
So Colin Fraser says we aren't sure. We have Byrne, Lascelles, the club captain, and Alex Murphy before we get to Dummett and Kraft. Yeah, look, I think it's there are. I mean, the window I think overall has been really good for Newcastle. And they've strengthened, I think, in two areas where they really needed strengthening the most. That being in that centre midfield and then being out on the left. And I guess for many, actually, probably the most frustrating thing of it all is how they've struggled to get players off the books. You know, it took a long time for Ryan Fraser to be sent off down to Southampton. As we do this podcast, we know Jeff Hendrick was set to join Sheff Wed, and Hayden, after trying to get to Luton, after trying to get to Sheff Wed, now looks like he's going to potentially move to Standard Liège. But no, here's a look, that deal will probably fall through. It's been a little bit tough to get the players who signed potentially long contracts under the Mike Ashley era off the books, and therefore to free up a bit of wage to potentially invest in another signing for the current day squad.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we were all surprised at as you say, the time it took. You know, I mean, Ryan Fraser, the writing's been on the wall for months for him, and only took until last Friday to get him out the door. Isaac Hayden, you know, bless him, because he's a little fan favourite and he always gives us all, but he's really, really been struggling to find a team, and that is partly because of the wages that he was on at Newcastle United after that lengthy contract he was given, which still has another 3 years to run. Jeff Hendrick's obviously just literally been announced as a Sheffield Wednesday player. He will spend the last year of his Newcastle deal out on loan. 3 players that had to go, 3 players that have been training away from the first team. They've been told by Eddie Howe, you know, a long time ago that they didn't have a future at the club. But I think Newcastle were just sort of feeling the after effects of those Mike Ashley contracts, and they've struggled to get them off the books. And you know, you look at who they've got rid of this summer. Obviously, the 3 that we've just mentioned, Alan St. Maximum, they didn't actually have that many players to move on. It's going to be interesting now. We sort of move into the next, you know, phase of Newcastle United in the next transfer window next summer. Who are the players that they're going to move on? You know, can they keep up this top 4, top 6 run? I mean, that they keep Bruno, Botman, etc. Or are they going to have to move Miggy and Byrne on? It's going to be interesting to see where they go next. But outgoings, I think Eddie Howe wanted to keep the bulk of the squad together, and he's done just that.
He certainly has. And, you know, there was talk about Lewis Miley and others going out on loan. You know, Eddie Howe said Lewis Miley's going to stop around. That didn't stop some speculation. Alex Murphy, another one. I mean, they look like they probably will end up stopping. Now, I'm not sure that the rules are with the loan window. Maybe there might be a bit of scope for teams to come in and grab a couple of youngsters. But yeah, just to make one final point on the whole Mike Ashley era. You know, it is, and I'm going to have to say the word which I've banned myself from saying, but as it's a special podcast, I'll say it. It's refreshing to be sat here on transfer deadline day and saying, look, where were the 2 priorities for Newcastle at the start of the window? It was on the left. It was a centre midfielder. Have Newcastle United done that? Tick, tick. And then they've also gone and strengthened left back and right back in Livramento and Lewis Hall as well. And we're not sitting here on transfer deadline day, despite Newcastle not buying anyone, feeling disappointed, feeling like let down, feeling like Newcastle haven't done enough. Yes, we'd like to see them maybe have bought another striker or another centre back, but actually what they've done is they've strengthened to a really good degree. The squad is definitely better than it was before the window, and I think that's refreshing. We're not tracking the helicopter on transfer deadline day and being disappointed when a second-rate Fulham striker doesn't agree a move, you know, because they've done the bulk of the business early and they've got who they needed in.
Absolutely, and I think let's be positive, as we say. We're talking about it being a good window. Yes, people might want a couple more. They might want 1 or 2 more through the door. They might be a little bit gutted that they haven't got that. But we're talking about cover, aren't we? We're talking about, yeah, they may be a little bit short in certain areas because of if we get an injury. Eddie Howe, as he said, as soon as they got Lewis Hall through the door, he thought, right, we've got enough. We don't need to chase. We know there's not going to be any dead day panic like we've seen at Manchester United, like we've seen at Tottenham, like we've seen at Liverpool. You know, Newcastle United got their business done early. There was no scrambling around for a late Hamza Chowdhury low deal, which is, refreshing, as you would like to say. So, good window, maybe one light, but I think on the whole, you've got it rated well. And look, if they get lucky with the injury gods until January, it'll have proved that they've made the right decision.
Do you think that now already they'll be planning for January? Because obviously we've mentioned there the left back position. We've got out and got Lewis Hall, but we probably like still another senior left back to come in. I've mentioned there number 6 for me. We've mentioned there potentially a striker and a centre back. Do you think already they're turning their attention to that January window and they'll want it the ground running come January the 1st?
Well, funnily enough, Eddie Howe sort of got asked that question this morning, and he was asked, "Are you already looking at January? Are you already looking at next summer?" And he sort of laughed and said, "Well, no, I'm not. I'm this window's still going on." But I think deep down, he will have. I think they know that there'll have been targets that were there this summer that they can't have, gone for because of FFP. They don't want to sell themselves short, and if they need a new recruit brought in January, the money isn't there. So I think they absolutely will have their eyes set on further deals. I think what's quite telling is the fact that Newcastle have been linked with a lot of young players. And when I mean young players, I mean under 21 or academy level that don't look to have been signed off yet. I think we're going to see a massive recruitment push in the next couple of months for players to improve the academy. We've already seen obviously 17-year-old Travis Hearns coming tonight. I think we'll see a lot more of that in the coming months. But absolutely, I don't believe that Eddie Howe was telling the truth this morning when he said that he didn't, already have one eye on January or next summer.
Yeah, Travis Hearns joins from Shrewsbury, centre midfielder, 17-year-old, as Aaron says there. So one to watch in that position. When you look around, Aaron, the rest of the wins, I mean, it's been a bit of a crazy day today. I mean, Hugo Lloris linked to Newcastle in the last few hours, which was a bizarre name to be pushed Newcastle's way. Harry Maguire earlier in the week. I guess just on that, we always knew Newcastle were going to be linked to these big names, and they've stuck to their guns though. They haven't done what a lot of people have expected them to do, and maybe go out and sign big names and big players for big wages. They've obviously got a plan and they've stuck to it, and that's why they've got. When we say they've signed, the 4 they have, we know that they were the 4 on a list. They've looked at them for a long time, and I guess that in itself shows you just how well a transfer approach is going at Newcastle.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the fear when Newcastle United got taken over was that they were just going to be used as a vehicle by agents to push their unwanted players onto them, and in a degree that's been the case. We've seen some quite outlandish links, not just this summer but in previous windows. And as you say, Newcastle haven't bitten at all. Andrew has just made a very good point in the comment here, saying that this is a measured, strategic approach. This is the new norm. This is not trying to get the fax machine working on deadline day to try and get a deal over the line. They've got it done. They've got it done with a week to go, and there's no late rushing. So, as you said, the 4 that they wanted were on the list. Harvey Barnes, long-time admirer by Eddie Howe. The 2 fullbacks they brought in, high on the list, given how high that ceiling is for them too. And then you've just gone and signed one of the best midfielders in Europe. So, yeah, measured approach. Hopefully here to stay, and no biting at those potentially tempting agent deals that get offered on a player.
That teams have gone a little bit crackers today. I mean, Brennan Johnson's just been confirmed at Spurs for about 45 million. Now, we were talking in the office, weren't we, before we headed home about Johnson. Big fan of him, but we were saying I think you'd spend that money after a second or third season in the Premier League, not after a debut season where he scored 8 goals.
Yeah, look, a bit of risk attached to that one. I think, as you say, a very good player. I thought he impressed last season for Forest out wide, and I think no doubt he'll probably fit into the Spurs team. But it's a big price tag. I think it's not just Tottenham. I think you look around the league. Liverpool, they might have fended off that late interest for Mohamed Salah, but big midfield rebuilding job that they've done there. Losing Henderson, Fabinho, Oxlade-Chamberlain, Milner, and then having to bring in 3 or 4 new midfielders is going to be a big challenge for them. I'm saying this a little bit sore still from Sunday, but Manchester United, didn't really seem to have a cohesive plan. They've just spent the last 12 hours scrambling around to try and get Amrabat over the line. A lot of the clubs that are going to be in and around Newcastle have had sort of disjointed and a little bit of a strange window, and I think that just again shows why Newcastle have been smart to try and get their business done early.
Indeed, I mean the Man United there confirmed And I mean, we talk about Spurs, how they really replaced Harry Kane. That'll be one to watch. And Nottingham Forest as well have gone absolutely crackers. And I can't work out of Nottingham Forest because they're signing decent players, but I just don't see how their approach works. I mean, they've signed the Benfica goalkeeper who kept 21 clean sheets in 34 games last season as Benfica won the title. I mean, that's a good signing, but they do seem to be on that scattergun approach where they're going to have to build a dressing room nearly as big as Chelsea's.
Yeah, look, I think we all thought Forest would be one of those teams that spent massive last summer, stayed in the league, and then maybe took it a bit easy. They seem to be, still be spending at will. I wonder if financial fair play might eventually catch up with them. Chelsea, I mean, who knows what on earth is going on, at that club. I mean, they've signed some really, really good talent, but it just seems like, they're signing them all in the same position, and that's out wide. They haven't really got an out-and-out striker other than Nicholas Jackson. You could probably say that their defense is still a bit shaky. I can't understand the logic there. I mean, people have a go at Newcastle United and the finances and, killing the game, whatever, but Chelsea have just spent £1 billion in 3 transfer windows, and there's hardly any scrutiny on them. So very interesting to see what they do. Bournemouth have spent a lot of money, as me and you were talking about this morning, off air. There's a lot of teams that have really, really spent. And yes, Newcastle United have spent a lot of money. They've spent over £100 million on 3 players. That'll be 130 or 140 million by the time Lewis Hall's money gets added to that. But you don't get the feeling that they've gone scattergun or gung-ho. It's measured and it's smart and it's sensible. And it's baby steps, which is, I think, what Newcastle United fans are quite happy with.
Yeah, Richie says we've come a long way in a short time. No negativity. Let's see where we are in 5 years. I honestly believe we will win a silverware for the first time in my 47 years. And Sean says he's confused to why, as Chelsea got the right to sign all these players when Newcastle are restricted by FFP. And he says the same something about Nottingham Forest. I mean, the Newcastle owners have been very clear about abiding by the rules. And I guess probably the main point there, because you referenced it in your answer before, and that there's a good chance FFP might catch up with a couple of sides in the years to come, whereas Newcastle United don't want to have that. They don't want to be bitten down the line. So, you spend within your means now, within the rules now, not to say the other teams haven't, because, that's not, I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is Newcastle are being cautious about their own finances so to avoid any potential penalty down the line.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I know I keep saying it, but they're still, feeling the after effects of 14 years of neglect. And actually the deals that he was doing financially were, really, really poor for the club and what should be a booming Premier League side. It might not happen this window, it might not happen in January, but I think we're slowly going to see the shackles taken off a bit. I mean, that Seller deal is absolutely huge. You're getting probably 20 to 25 million pounds more from Seller than you were from Fun 88. This Adidas deal is going to completely, revolutionize their finances, because you're going from £5 million a year under Castor to, potentially, as high as sort of 60 under Adidas. Game changing sums, sponsorship wise, and soon and further down the line we're going to sort of stop hearing about FFP, I think, because Newcastle are soon going to be self-sustaining, financially profitable, and I think it's going to be very interesting to see how Chelsea and Forest eventually balance the books, but Newcastle don't need to because they've done it clever.
Final question then before I let you sign up, because I know you've been up for quite a while. Looking around the Premier League and looking at the players who've switched sides, is there a player that you're looking at and you're thinking, oh, if only Newcastle United could have found that X amount of money down the back of the sofa, I would have loved to have seen him join Newcastle United?
Look, regular listeners are probably bored to the back teeth of me saying it, but Mr. Diaby I would have absolutely loved, and I just think paid a very, very close eye on him at St James's Park, and he just looked fantastic. But I don't want to keep boring people with that, so I'll think of someone else. You know what it is? We were talking about it, I think, earlier in the window. I'd have loved Cole Palmer for that price at Manchester City. Very inexperienced, very raw, but very, very decent. And maybe at the back, if they were going to go and push the boat out, maybe Theo Hernandez from AC Milan, but that might just be a little bit too optimistic at this stage. But they're in the group of death in the Champions League. I think we can dream a little bit.
Yeah, we've got kind of phrase saying Madison at the minute. Andrew Gibson says Diaby. For me, it would have been You know who it would have been? It would have been Mr. Tyler Adams. And I still think Newcastle are lacking a number 6. I think a 20 million deal for him could be a real bargain this summer. But I agree, Cole Palmer, I can't understand why Man City have allowed him to go to Chelsea. Because if Pochettino gets it right, they could be rivaling City for the title. I mean, I don't think he's going to get it right. I think it's a bit of a mess there. But
Yeah,
I can't understand why they've let him go. I mean, for me, we're talking about options on the right to try and compete with Miguel. I mean, when you're talking about upgrades, Diarra would be an upgrade, but Cole Palmer can play out there. I mean, he looks a fantastic talent.
yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because City have just gone all out and signed this Jeremy Doku, and essentially playing in the same position as Cole Palmer. For whatever reason, Pep was happy to sell him, which is a surprise to us, a bit of a head scratcher. But interesting to see how he does at Chelsea, because I imagine we're going to see a lot more of him now.
Yeah, indeed. And then just to finish off, then give a rating out of 10 for the window.
Look, I know there's a little bit of negativity, and I mean, a lot of the comments that we've had on this live chat have said, it's a poor window, we need to strengthen in certain places, but I think let's zoom out a little bit. A week ago, we were all happy with it. I'm going to give it a solid 9. I think it could have been upgraded to a 10 if they'd maybe got another set of legs in at the centre back and maybe another left back, but that's just for me. I'm going to give it a 9. What about you?
I'm going to give it an 8. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. I think they did what they need to do in the right positions. And I think the positions we're talking about are just to make us feel comfortable. The centre back, the striker, the number 6, because you have players in those positions. And, the players that would come in those positions, unless they were really, really good, they would be 3rd, 4th choice in some instance. So it's more cover as you've been seeing over the past week. In 8 out of 10, you can always do better. But yeah, I think happy with the window. The players have brought in like Harvey Barnes. I mean, Tonali's different class. Barnes looks real quality. And the 2 lads on fullback, versatile, big features ahead of them. I think Newcastle have done a good job, and I think they've sent a statement out as well. They're not going to pay silly money. They're not going to be budged. They're not going to just sign anyone here or there. They mean business. They've got a strategy. They're going to stick to it. They have stuck to it. They stick to the players that that are on this list that they've researched. And I think January will be more of the same, and it's going to be an interesting window then. But of course, we've got loads of football to come in between that, and not least the Champions League, which we're all looking forward to. We'll just quickly jump in and send some comments to sign off there. Eric says Newcastle should have signed Teeny. Dan King celebrating no more Fraser and no more Deadwood, and Hall has also been praised by Dan there. Thank you very much for joining us here on the Everything is Black and White podcast. Get yourselves to bed. It's been a pleasure to bring you transfer deadline day through chroniclelive.co.uk here on the Everything is Black and White podcast. Hit that subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube, and share the podcast if you're listening through the app later. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your weekend. And here's hoping Newcastle can get 3 points against Brighton on Saturday, and we'll bring you live coverage of that game through our website, through our dedicated live blog over at chroniclelive.co.uk.